it's Katrina with Saxon 5. I'm here with Senator Bradford's office having further dialogue around the conversation cannabis. And there are some bills that we're looking at. This one doesn't necessarily have a number associated with it, but it's in process, it sounds like. So again, thank you, Senator Bradford, for having us over and having this dialogue. What are some of the bills you're involved in the cannabis space?
Well, we've introduced a couple. Language has been put across the desk a few weeks ago before bill deadline to deal again with expansion of 1294, making sure we have ongoing funding going forward with this program. Also, some fee waiver money to assist with fee waivers.
This is the Equity Act that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, but the new one as well is in a different space, a little dealing specifically.
How different is it and why?
Just dealing with fee waivers specifically.
Okay.
This was more of equity. Now we're just trying to help everybody, because a lot of times they say, well, I didn't know it costs this much to get a license and stuff like that. And many of the barriers to entry is cost. So it's just shifting over a little bit to provide a little bit of assistance. There are some other bills that have been introduced that I'm going to be a co-author on, is also looking at reducing the tax structure and maybe possibly putting a suspension on it for a while, because we don't want to tax this market. By doing so, we're fearful that the underground economy is going to grow. So if you put a 40% tax on a product that someone says I can get on the street far little cheaper, so we want to avoid those unintended consequences of overtaxing. So let the market kind of like grow and then gradually increase those taxes. So those are things we're looking at. Nothing in stone yet.
So it sounds like there's a lot of thinking behind the economic aspect of all of this. Yes. And a lot of folks in the industry have been sharing with us that their number one biggest complaint is taxation, and it's not incentivizing folks to get into the business. So you nailed it right there. How soon could we potentially see this as far as benefiting the legalized market, the licensed folks, the folks who are following the rules? Incentivizing them by decreasing tax. Are you looking at completely removing tax for a brief period, or minimizing the amount?
It's a combination of both. I mean, some members are talking about a complete time out right now on taxes, and then some folks are talking about ramping it down a little bit.
Which one do you stand for?
Ramping it down. State still has to make revenue, has to deliver revenue. So if we can bring it down to a more acceptable rate, I think it'd be a lot more acceptable to folks. But at 40%, a lot of folks
really high. It's
causing a lot of heartburn, not only for the business end, but for the customer as well. So, so we're looking at a combination of things. I mean, even some of the money we're looking at on enforcement. But we want to make sure that we're not targeting those people who have been targeted before, Black and brown, underserved communities. So we want to deter the illegal market, and enforcement is important. But I think by legitimizing and helping folks get into the market, that will be the greatest deterrent to the illegal market, by allowing those folks who've been shut out opportunity to have a legitimate business opportunity. That in and of itself will help, I think, more so than putting more money into law enforcement.
So, Senator Bradford, as you're having these dialogues with your counterparts in the legislature, are you finding that most folks are on board with the way you're thinking about all of this? Helping the legalized market and obviously decreasing the black market, as they call it. I mean, the governor obviously stands for
underground market.
Or the underground market. I know there's more than one way. A lot of people are. I've been trained recently to not call it the black market. It's the underground market or the illicit market. So as far as that goes, are you finding that like you said, the enforcement piece, that's been another really hot topic we've been covering as well. Are you finding that most of the legislators are on board with that?
I'm not going to say most. I mean, it's not been a lot of opposition to what I did last year with 1294. It was just those folks who have reservations, they just weren't on board, period. But it was no organized opposition. There are some members who, regardless of what we do, they're just anti-cannabis.
Right.
And you're not going to move them no matter what you do. And then you have those folks who are more pro-enforcement. So, and that's the angle where they're going to come from. They're not going to want to put money into the social programs and the equity programs, but more in the law enforcement. So
that's the part I don't understand. To have a real talk about that, I don't get that. Prop 64 is passed. It is legalized, even though jurisdictions have their own way of handling it and implementing it, and a lot of jurisdictions might not be even on board with it, as we know right now. even as a progressive state, and the rest of the nation is watching us closely right now, we're still in a situation where even in our legislature, your counterparts, there are folks who are completely against it.
Without a doubt. I mean, there's some folks who just won't vote for anything cannabis, and they can't wrap their heads around that fact that it's legal.
Do you think that confuses folks, and that's part of the reason why folks in industry or even the public gets confused about, is it really legal? There is still that stigma out there, and there is that confusion that has led to even a recent lawsuit I've heard.
It's just the biases. I was talking to a constituent of mine who have supported me forever, and she's no longer supporting me simply because I'm advocating. I'm like, it's legal, so let's put the framework around to make sure it works right versus having something legal and it be the wild, wild west and craziness happen. So I'm trying to help, shape what the voters of California passed by over 60%.
Absolutely.
It's been acceptable, and I'm trying to get folks to wrap their head around. This is not a drug; it's a plant. We didn't create this. It was here before we got here, and when man discovered cannabis, it wasn't for the purposes of getting high. It was for medicinal and commercial use. For clothing, for rope.
It's amazing the history, right?
Exactly, but a lot of folks don't know the history. So hopefully, through this process, we can share the history of what this has meant to California for a number of years, and what it's meant to this nation and the world too.
And I think the fear we've created as human beings around the war on drugs and that it's a pathway drug from past, I think that wiring is part of the issue, and I think that has led to where we are today. And secondly, I agree with you, as California being a progressive state that's legalized this, the voters, you guys have legalized this, it makes sense what you're saying. Hopefully you'll have much success with helping other people have empathy, or helping them, leading them to empathy, and also having folks understand where you're coming from.
Well, programs like this is going to help us as well,
Absolutely.
getting it out to the mass market and greater, community outreach. It might not physically come into the Capitol or follow the bills that we're doing, but through social media and programs like this, hopefully.
And impacting communities that were already underserved or having struggles. So thank you for your work and for your effort. And you heard it firsthand from the senator himself. He's taken a stand on cannabis and trying to work with his counterparts on getting everybody on board. So good luck with that. Thanks for following us here with Sacktown 5, and we'll continue to share a lot of the content around cannabis.